Hi everyone, welcome to week 13, our last week of the course. This week we'll be thinking about ethics and we'll be preparing for your final assignments. So this week we'll be reading Erica Berman's chapter 14, pages 288 to 290. This is the final paragraph of the final chapter in the text. And I think this section of the book is a really good way to reflect on some of the thinking that we've done throughout the course, the topics that we've covered, and how we might carry with us these discussions as we move forward, perhaps in other courses and in our practice with children. We'll also be reviewing the Early Childhood Educators of BC Code of Ethics. So this week, you will have no weekly notes as you'll be working on an online ethics tutorial. This course has examined, using a critical lens, the technologies of child development and the origins of research with young children. Thus, as a science and technology course, it's required that you complete an ethics tutorial on research with human subjects that's provided by the Government of Canada. So you'll be doing this ethics tutorial this week. And then also we'll be preparing for your final assignments. So by Sunday at 11:55 p.m., participate in your group's 1-hour virtual collaboratory using the questions that I've provided. And you might also want to use this time to discuss with your peers where you're at in your paper and get some feedback from them. Sorry. So throughout this course, we've discussed the technologies of developmental psychology and how the practices of research which inform our theories of child development are non-neutral, that they come from a particular historical trajectory, and these trajectories have ongoing social effects in children's everyday realities. We've talked about how these scientific measures, which aim to provide objectivity, precision, and truths, come from somewhere and often come with violences to particular groups. That these rationalities and research methods are produced. Hi everyone, welcome to week 13, our final week of the course. This week we'll be thinking ethics and preparing for your final assignments. So we'll be reading Erica Berman's chapter 14, pages 288 to 290. This is the final chapter and actually final paragraph of the text, and I think it's a good way to reflect on the thinking that we've done throughout the course by reading this chapter and the topics. Think about the topics that we've covered and how we might carry with us these discussions and ideas as we move forward in other courses and in practice. We'll also be reviewing the Early Childhood Educators of BC Code of Ethics. And this week you'll have no weekly notes as we'll be working on an online ethics tutorial. So this course has examined, using a critical lens, the technologies of child development and the origins of research with young children. So as a science and technology course, it's required that you complete an ethics tutorial on research with human subjects provided by the Government of Canada. So this week we'll be beginning that ethics tutorial, and we'll also be preparing for your final assignments. So by Sunday at 11:55 p.m., you should have also participated in your group's 1-hour virtual collaboratory, again using the questions that I've provided. So throughout the course, we've discussed the technologies of developmental psychology and examined how the practices of research which inform our theories of child development are non-neutral, that they come from a particular historical trajectory. We've discussed how these trajectories have ongoing social effects in children's everyday realities, that these scientific measures which aim to provide objectivity, precisions, and truths come from somewhere and often come with violences to particular groups. The rationalities that these research methods produce are often enacted through the documentation, the documents that guide our practice. And this week and in your final papers, you'll be further investigating the issues at play in relying only on these developmental technologies. There are ethical questions that arise, as we've discussed throughout the course, when we're thinking about these concepts. So how are we accountable as early childhood educators? What does it mean to be ethical as we navigate these very difficult and uncomfortable places between regulatory practices or codes and relationally situated and context-specific pedagogy? So as we consider these questions, how do we avoid thinking in a binary of this versus that? But rather thinking about it in a way that's both and. What is possible? What kinds of hybridities might exist in early childhood education that nourish multiple ways of being and thinking, but that don't fall back into colonial powers of thought? As educators, how is our work consequential in this? What is it that we're accountable to? How do we work and make sense of our own accountabilities amid the structures in our field? What does it mean to be ethical? So some of the questions to frame this week in your virtual collaboratories are, what are ethics? Thinking with the early childhood educators of BC Code, the Code of Ethics, and the Berman text, what are some curiosities, tensions, and possible contradictions that emerge as you navigate through these two readings? Using a critical lens to think beyond codes or regulatory policies, what might ethical work with children require? And lastly, what might be some of the ethical tensions at play in the use of developmental technologies, such as the Ages and Stages questionnaire and the EDI, which are provided in this week's Moodle? So the ethics tutorial this week, as you're working through it, consider the following questions. Why might it be necessary to consider the Government of Canada's framework for human research ethics in this course? Think back to our discussions in week 2 and 3 when we discussed the origins of developmental theory and researching infancy. And as you're completing this tutorial, try to notice what kind of language is used. Ask yourself, how is the human subject or the child positioned within this tutorial? And as you read, what do you notice about your own views of developmental research and technologies of early childhood education? So once you're finished the tutorial, there are 8 modules, I believe, you will have a certificate of completion that comes up for you. You'll need to submit the certificate of completion to the assignment Dropbox on Moodle by December 9th. Yes. Also note that your virtual collaboratory self-reflection is due on December 2nd. So you'll be required to submit a 1-page personal reflection that speaks to the quality of your participation in the virtual collaboratory and online forums. So please state in this document if you missed any sessions. So in this reflection, state and justify the grade that you think you deserve, and see the course outline for a breakdown of grades and their meaning. So in this assignment, you'll need to provide evidence of your participation using direct examples. So you might also refer to your collective Google Notes here for evidence. Also, something to consider is that quality participation is not based on how much is spoken, but rather I'm thinking about participation as evidence of your sustained critical thought, attentiveness to the readings, and depth of your contributions throughout the course. So in addition to the assessment tools that we've already discussed throughout the course, I've posted some resources that you might like to consider looking at from a critical lens if you're choosing to respond to question 3 in your final papers. So the EDI and the Ages and Stages questionnaire are a few possible resources you might choose to think with. And these final papers are due on December 9th. So in this paper, try to avoid taking a moral stance on the issue that you're discussing. This is feedback that I gave to a lot of you in your Pachacucha assignments. So this assignment is not intended for you to present a problem and respond with a solution or advocate for how you think things ought to be. Rather, you'll need to explore your topic using a critical lens. So unpack, tease apart the topic, consider origins, histories, and how it functions, what it does in early childhood education, and how it performs. And I really encourage you to use the readings in this paper. This will be really important. So when incorporating quotes into your writing, be sure to introduce the quote and situate it within your own writing. So this means that you shouldn't be bringing in a quote without discussing it and situating it within the argument of your paper. So also a reminder, if you would like support or guidance with your final papers, please contact me well in advance. If you wait a day or two before the due date, I might not be able to organize a time to meet with you and chat. And lastly, unfortunately, I cannot offer extensions on these final assignments. All assignments must be in by December 9th so that I have time to provide you with feedback, your marks, and then submit your grades. Also, just lastly, a last note, please feel free to contact me again well in advance of the final papers, and I'm happy to set up a Skype meeting with you if you'd like to discuss some questions that you have about the final papers, a topic that you're considering, or if you have any other questions about the final assignments. So yeah, I think that's about it, everybody. Have a great week.